Hello, Planeswalkers. I am Eric, and welcome back to Bane Alley Magic. Today I'm bringing you another deck tech video, and we're talking about Sapling of Colfenor. So, I know I said I wasn't going to make another video for a long time, but my friend Hunter needed help with his Sapling deck, so I made this video to help him out. I know in the comments you're going to say, "Post the deck list, please," but you know what? Shut up. I don't care. I make these videos for people to listen and or watch, not for them to just hit my deck list link. If you don't want to listen to me reading the cards, then just pause the video and fast forward through the images. I'm not going to write out the deck list because right now I just don't have the time. It's too time consuming just to make these videos as it is. Also, I say mana, not mana, so get over it. I'm from Hawaii. I know the origins of the word mana. I don't care if you say mana, it doesn't bother me at all. Just don't waste my time in the comments saying I pronounce it wrong, because I don't. If you want proof, look it up in the dictionary. On any dictionary website, it will pronounce it for you. Or you can also watch my video called How Do You Pronounce Mana? Okay, so enough of that. Let's talk about Sapling of Colfenor. The Sapling is 3 and 2 hybrid green-black mana for a 2/5 Tree Folk Shaman that has Indestructible, and whenever Sapling of Colfenor attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it is a creature card, you gain life equal to that card's toughness, lose life equal to its power, then put it into your hand. So when you look at Sapling, you may think, oh wow, she'd be great for Tree Folk Tribal. But listen, she's not. Tree folk in green and black are just pretty crummy at the moment. They just don't have enough ways to disrupt the opponent, pump themselves up, draw you cards, or ramp. When you're making a tribal deck, you want to make sure that your creatures themselves have an abundance of ways of doing some of, if not all of, these things. If your creatures don't do these things, you will quickly run out of room in your deck because you need to put in so many non-creature spells to make up for it. If you want to build a decent tree folk deck, you need to have at least 3 colors, and for that, Doran the Siege Tower is the optimum choice. Doran makes all of your tree folk extra powerful, and splashing in white gives you a lot more tree folk creature options. So, what I think Sapling of Colfenor is good for is going aggro, and even killing someone with commander damage. Yes, I know she only has 2 power, but the fact that she is indestructible and can often draw you cards is just excellent. In case you didn't realize it, if the card you revealed from Sapling's attack trigger is not a creature, you will not draw it. You'll just put it back on top of your library. So to make sure she will draw us cards most of the time, I am running 57 creatures in this deck. That's right, more than half of this deck is creatures. Of those creatures, we have 12 creatures that draw us cards, 14 that can pump up Sapling's power, 9 that ramp, and 19 that act as removal. We also have 2 that tutor, and 1 that's also a land. So most of the time we are going to be triggering the card draw from Sapling. Since I didn't go with a large toughness theme, that means we are sometimes going to be losing life, but I've put in ways to get around that, so don't worry. So let's get into the deck, starting with the creatures. So first we're going to start with the creatures that can pump up Sapling's power. First we have Night Howler, 1 and 2 black for a 0/0 horror that has Bestow for 4. So for 2 and 2 black, if you cast this card for its Bestow cost, it's an aura spell with Enchant Creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not attached to a creature. Night Howler and Enchanted Creature each get +X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So the Bestow cards work really great with the Sapling deck because they can pump up Sapling and they will draw, they will be a card draw off of Sapling's attack trigger. What's also great about the Bestow effect is that when Sapling leaves the battlefield, like if it gets exiled, I guess, or returned to your hand or sacrificed, if Sapling leaves the battlefield, then the Bestow creature will just enter the battlefield and not go to the graveyard like most other auras. And Night Howler is great in this deck because we have so many creatures that we're probably going to have a lot of creatures in the graveyard, and so Night Howler is probably going to be giving Sapling at least +3/+3, +4/+4, maybe more. So, yeah, great for pumping up Sapling. Next we have Herald of Torment, 1 and 2 black for a 3/3 demon with Bestow for 5. It has flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has flying. So giving Sapling +3/+3 and a bit of evasion is really important for getting in that extra commander damage. Next we have Boon Satyr, 1 and 2 green for a 4/2 Satyr with flash and Bestow for 5. Enchanted creature gets +4/+2. So adding that +4 power onto Sapling is huge, making it a 6/7 creature. That's definitely a great way to have Sapling deal lethal commander damage. Like I said, it's probably only going to deal commander damage to 1 or 2 opponents, but, hey, it could do more. We do have a lot of removal in this deck, and so that can give us plenty of time to deal lethal commander damage and, survive our opponent's attacks because we're removing their attacking and blocking creatures. Next we have Nantuko Mentor. For 2 and a green, it's a 1/1 insect druid, and you can pay 2 and a green and tap Nantuko Mentor, and target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So basically, Nantuko Mentor is doubling the power of Sapling Colfenor, and doubling for just 3 mana is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. Next we have Ronis the Indomitable, 2 and a green for a 5/5 legendary god with Death Touch and Indestructible. Ronis the Indomitable can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. And for 2 and a green, another target creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until the end of the turn. So Ronis, all by himself, can give another creature power 4 or greater, so then Ronis can attack or block. And so yeah, for just 3 mana, pumping up Sapling's power is a great deal, and we have a Death Touch Indestructible God on the battlefield as well. That's awesome. Next is Somberwald Alpha, 3 and a green for a 3/2 wolf that says whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And for 1 and a green, target creature you control gains trample until end of turn. Well, trample is definitely very important for dealing in lethal commander damage. But yeah, not only does it give our creatures trample, but it also pumps them up +1/+1 whenever they become blocked. Next we have Ivy Lane Denizen. For 3 and a green, you get a 2/3 elf warrior that says whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. We do have quite a few green creatures in this deck, so that can eventually lead to Sapling getting very big. Next we have Nylea, God of the Hunt, or Nelia, I think it's Nylea, God of the Hunt. 3 and a green for a 6/6 legendary enchantment creature god with Indestructible. As long as your devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature. Each green mana symbol in the mana cost of permanents you control counts towards your devotion to green. So, if you just had Sapling and Nylea on the battlefield, your devotion to green would be 3. And Nylea says, other creatures you control have trample, and for 4 mana, 3 and a green, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So same as with Ronis, the Indomitable, we're using this god to pump up Sapling of Colfenor, and this also gives Sapling trample. Very good deal. Next we have God Eternal Ronis, a 5/5 legendary zombie god for 3 and 2 green that has Death Touch. And when God Eternal Ronis enters the battlefield, double the power of each creature you control until end of turn. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. When God Eternal Ronis dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. So Ronis kind of has this Craterhoof Behemoth effect, where you're just doubling all the power of your creatures for 1 turn, and that is fabulous. Next we have Cultivator of Blades, 3 and 2 green for a 1/1 elf artificer that has Fabricate 2. So that means when this creature enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, or create 2 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. So for the purpose of our deck, we're usually going to be just putting 2+1/+1 counters on it, because whenever Cultivator of Blades attacks, you may have other attacking creatures get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is Cultivator of Blades power. So we could potentially be giving Sapling of Colfenor +3/+3. Next we have Verdurous Gearhulk. 3 and 2 green for a 4/4 construct with trample, and when Verdurous Gearhulk enters the battlefield, distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. So we can just put all 4 of those +1/+1 counters onto Sapling of Colfenor, and, since it's indestructible, it'll probably keep those counters for the rest of the game. Next we have Creeper Hulk. 3 and 2 green for a 5/5 plant elemental with trample, and it says for 1 and a green, until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness of 5/5 and gains trample. So making Sapling of Colfenor a 5/5 is just basically giving it +3 to its power. So that's great for just 2 mana, and it gives it trample, exactly what we want. Next we have Pathbreaker Ibex, 4 and 2 green for a 3/3 goat. That says whenever Pathbreaker Ibex attacks, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if Pathbreaker Ibex is the greatest power, then you'd be giving all of your creatures +3/+3 and trample. Great deal. And next, our last pump creature is Craterhoof Behemoth. A pretty expensive card right now, so I hope Wizards reprints it, but it's just really essential in this deck. I had to include it. It's a 5/5 beast for 5 and 3 green, so that's 8 mana. It has haste, and when Craterhoof Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And like I said, we have a total of 57 creatures in this deck, so odds are Craterhoof Behemoth is going to be pumping up our creatures really big. This is a card that just ends games on the spot. If you got 10 creatures out, maybe let's just say you had 9 creatures out, and then you cast Craterhoof Behemoth. Well, Craterhoof Behemoth counts itself in the creature count, so then all of your creatures are getting +10/+10 and trample. Just a ridiculous deal, and it has haste, so it can attack right away. Next we have Murderous Rider. 1 and 2 black for a 2/3 zombie knight, which is the first of our removal creatures. So we have, like I said, we have 19 cards in this deck that act as removal, 19 creatures. So Murderous Rider just came out in the new Throne of Eldraine set, and so it has an adventure called Swift End. So for 3 mana, 1 and 2 black, you destroy target creature or planeswalker, and you lose 2 life, and that's an instant. And so you can cast this as an instant from your hand and then exile it, and you may cast the creature half of the card later from exile. And so Murderous Rider as a creature is a 2/3 zombie knight with lifelink, and when it dies, you put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So yeah, a little bit of removal and a creature on one card. Fabulous. Next we have Thrashing Brontodon, 1 and 2 green for a 3/4 dinosaur that says you can pay 1, sacrifice Thrashing Brontodon, and destroy target artifact or enchantment. So this will gain us life if we draw it off of Sapling, and yeah, just a little bit of removal on a creature, very essential. Next we have Reclamation Sage. 2 and a green for a 2/1 elf shaman that says when Reclamation Sage enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. A lot of people are going to be trying to enchant Sapling of Colfenor because they can't destroy it. So, yeah, we need plenty of ways to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Next, we have Manglehorn. 2 and a green for a 2/2 beast. When Manglehorn enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact, and artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. That'll really disrupt them. Next, we have Ravenous Chupacabra. 2 and 2 black for a 2/2 beast horror. When Ravenous Chupacabra enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Again, clearing the way so that Sapling can get in that commander damage. Next, we have Acidic Slime. 3 and 2 green for a 2/2 ooze with Death Touch. When Acidic Slime enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. Next is Noxious Gearhulk. 4 and 2 black for a 5/4 construct with Menace, which means it can't be blocked except for by 2 or more creatures. When Noxious Gearhulk enters the battlefield, you may destroy another target creature. If a creature is destroyed this way, you gain life equal to its toughness. So a little bit of creature removal and a little bit of life gain, which we might need because Sapling is probably going to be causing us to lose some life sometimes. Next we have Steel Hellkite, a 5/5 artifact dragon for 6 mana. It has flying, of course. For 2 mana, it gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. And for X, you destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once each turn. So this is a board wipe on a creature, a one-sided board wipe anyway. For one of your opponents, you can destroy all of their permanents with converted mana cost X. So if they're playing a token deck, you can just pay 0 and destroy all of their tokens as long as Steel Hellkite got in combat damage. But yeah, this is just a great removal creature. Can kill a lot of your opponent's creatures if it stays alive. Next we have Reaper from the Abyss. 3 and 3 black for a 6/6 demon with flying, and it has Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, destroy target non-demon creature. So yeah, as long as another creature died, at the end of the turn you get to kill another creature. That's a great deal. And you also have a 6/6 flying demon. Next is Hythonia the Cruel. 4 and 2 black for a 4/6 Gorgon with Death Touch. It has Monstrosity 3, so for 6 and 2 black, if this creature isn't monstrous, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. And when Hythonia becomes monstrous, you destroy all non-Gorgon creatures. So this is a total board wipe on a creature, unless your opponents are playing Gorgon Tribal, in which case they're going to be terrible anyway. Gorgon Tribal is not a thing yet. I really hope it becomes a thing, because that would be super cool. But yeah, right now Gorgons just don't have enough good creatures to make a good tribal deck. But yeah, this is a one-sided, not one-sided, but this is a board wipe that leaves you with a 7/9 Gorgon on the battlefield, and also it's not going to destroy Sapling of Colfenor because it's indestructible. Next we have Tetzamok, Primal Death. 4 and 2 black for a 6/6 Elder Dinosaur with Death Touch, and for 1 black, you can reveal Tetzamok from your hand and put a prey counter on target creature. Activate this ability only during your turn. When Tetzamok enters the battlefield, destroy each creature your opponents control with a prey counter on it. So, again, if you have a ton of black mana before you cast this, you can potentially just completely one-sided board wipe your opponents. But more often than not, this is just going to hit maybe 2, maybe 5 creatures on the battlefield, but that's still a pretty good deal and leaves you with a big body. Next we have Deathbringer Regent. 5 and 2 black for a 5/6 flying dragon, and when Deathbringer Regent enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand and there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield, destroy all other creatures. So again, a board wipe on a creature. We have almost all of our abilities on creatures in this deck, so a great card for this deck. Yes, it will destroy our creatures as well. Sometimes that's exactly what you need in a game of Commander. If you're way behind, you don't care if you destroy all your creatures as long as you're destroying all of their creatures. And again, Sapling is going to survive because it's indestructible. So next we have Overseer of the Damned. 5 and 2 black for a 5/5 flying demon. When Overseer of the Damned enters the battlefield, you may destroy target creature. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So we are a removal-heavy deck, so this is potentially going to get us a lot of 2/2 black zombies, and right when it enters the battlefield, it destroys something. Great deal. Next is Kalitas, Bloodchief of Get. 5 and 2 black for a 5/5 vampire warrior, and you can pay 3 black and tap it to destroy target creature. If that creature is put into a graveyard this way, you put a black vampire creature token onto the battlefield. Its power is equal to that creature's power, and its toughness is equal to that creature's toughness. So yeah, just removing your opponent's creatures and kind of making vanilla copies of them. That's a really cool deal. Next we have World Breaker, 6 and a green for a 5/7 Eldrazi with Devoid. And when you cast World Breaker, exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. It has reach, and for 2 and a colorless, you can sacrifice a land to return World Breaker from your graveyard to your hand. So this is really important for the deck in case someone plays Overwhelming Splendor. because Overwhelming Splendor is going to turn off all of our Enter the Battlefield effects as well. It's going to make all of our creatures just 1/1s. So what's great about World Breaker is you get to exile target artifact, enchantment, or land when you cast it, not when it enters the battlefield. So we have about 3 cards in the deck like this that get rid of something on cast instead of on enter the battlefield. And again, that's really important if someone decides to play Overwhelming Splendor on you. Next, we have Avatar of Woe, 6 and 2 black for a 6/5 avatar. If there are 10 or more creature cards total in all graveyards, this spell costs 6 less to cast. So you can get this for just 2 black mana. Avatar of Woe has Fear, so it can't be blocked except for by artifact creatures and or black creatures, and you can tap it to destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. So just repeatable removal on a creature. That's great. Next, we have Mockery of Nature, 9 mana for a 6/5 Eldrazi beast that has Emerge for 8. So for 7 and a green, you may cast the spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the Emerge cost reduced by that creature's converted mana cost. So if you sacrificed, say, something that's converted mana cost 6, then this is only going to cost 2 mana to play. Because you pay the Emerge cost minus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. So this is almost never going to cost 9 mana unless you just have a ton of mana lying around. As long as you can sacrifice something, you can get this out pretty cheap. And when you cast Mockery of Nature, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, this is an on-cast trigger, not an enter the battlefield trigger, so it'll help us with things that, like Overwhelming Splendor, or something that stops enter the battlefield abilities like Torpor Orb. And next we have probably the most expensive card in the deck, or maybe right behind Craterhoof Behemoth, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, a 10/10 indestructible Eldrazi for 10 mana. Blah, blah, blah. For 10 mana, you get a 10/10 indestructible Eldrazi that says when you cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, exile 2 target permanents. So exile 2 of anything you want, even lands. And whenever Ulamog attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. Yeah, that last ability is just super broken. Probably the most broken mill effect in the entire game, because it mills them into exile as well. But again, more importantly, this has the cast trigger of exiling 2 target permanents. Really important. Next, we have Dread Cacodemon, 7 and 3 black for an 8/8 demon that says when Dread Cacodemon enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, destroy all creatures your opponents control, then tap all other creatures you control. So this is just a fabulous board wipe creature, just absolutely fabulous. You have an 8/8 on the battlefield, and you destroy all of your opponent's creatures, and all you do is just tap all of your creatures. So you can cast this on your second main phase after you've attacked, and all your creatures might be tapped already anyway. And you don't lose any of your creatures. It's just a total of one-sided board wipe on a creature. I love Dread Cacodemon in almost any black deck. Fabulous card. All right, so let's move on to our ramp creatures because, some of our spells are pretty expensive. We got to have a bit of ramp in this deck. So our first ramp creature is Nyssa, Vastwood Seer. 2 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Scout that says, when Nyssa, Vastwood Seer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic forest card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, you exile Nyssa and then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. And she transforms into the Planeswalker Nyssa, Sage Animist. Nyssa, Sage Animist enters with 3 loyalty counters. You can +1 to reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. -2, you put a legendary 4/4 green elemental creature token named Ashaya, the Awoken World, onto the battlefield. Or for -7, untap up to 6 target lands. They become 6/6 elemental creatures. They are still lands. So, most importantly here is Nyssa, Vastwood Seer's Enter the Battlefield effect, helping us get a forest and put it into our hand, unfortunately, not directly on the battlefield. But Nyssa, Sage Animist will get a land directly onto the battlefield, right? You reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it right on the battlefield. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. So ramp and card draw right on a creature or on a planeswalker. -2 ability, getting you that elemental creature token is going to help a lot with protecting Nyssa herself. And yeah, if you get that -7 ability, that's pretty great. I mean, that is 36 power on the battlefield right there, potentially of which all can attack right away because you're untapping them all. Hopefully they've been on the battlefield, so they're not going to be summoning sick. If you just played that land this turn, it will be summoning sick. Next we have Yavimaya Elder, 1 and 2 green for a 2/1 human druid that says when Yavimaya Elder dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. And for 2 mana, you can sacrifice Yavimaya Elder to draw a card. So a little bit of ramp and card draw on a creature. Unfortunately, it does not put the lands onto the battlefield, which most of our other ramp creatures do. So let's look at those. Yavimaya Dryad is 1 and 2 green for a 2/1 Dryad with Forest Walk. When Yavimaya Dryad enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a forest card and put it onto the battlefield tapped under target player's control. If you do, shuffle your library. So that's pretty spicy. You can potentially give your opponent a forest so that Yavimaya Dryad can get in unblocked using Forest Walk, but most of the time we're just going to be giving it to ourselves. Next we have Courser of Crufix, 1 and 2 green for a 2/4 Centaur that says you play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So a little bit of a ramp, little bit of life gain. Also just really great with Sapling of Colfenor because if the top card of your library is a land, when Sapling attacks, then you don't get to draw it. So Courser of Crufix helps us to make sure that that's not going to be a land by allowing you to play that land from the top of your library, and then hopefully the next card's going to be a creature. Next we have Wood Elves, 2 and a green for a 1/1 Elf Scout. When Wood Elves enters the battlefield, search your library for a forest card and put that card onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Notice it doesn't say basic forest, so you can get any forest, even a non-basic forest, a forest swamp, for example, and put it onto the battlefield. Great deal. Next we have Farhaven Elf, 2 and a green for a 1/1 Elf Druid. When Farhaven Elf enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Next we have Oracle of Muldiah, 3 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Shaman that says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. You play with the top card of your library revealed, and you may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. Same thing as with Courser of Crufix, it's just really important to play those lands off the top of your library so that hopefully the next card is a creature card so we can draw it off of Sapling of Colfenor. And this also allows us to play an additional land every turn. That's great. So if the top 2 cards of your library are lands, you can play them both. That's awesome. So next we have Ondu Giant, 3 and a green for a 2/4 Giant Druid. When Ondu Giant enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Next we have Solemn Simulacrum, 4 mana for a 2/2 Golem. When Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. When Solemn Simulacrum dies, you may draw a card. So it also replaces itself, and it gets you that land onto the battlefield. That's very important. Next we have Abzan Beastmaster. So this is the first of our card draw creatures. So Abzan Beastmaster is 2 and a green for a 2/1 Hound Shaman. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest toughness or tied for the greatest toughness. So we have some pretty tough creatures in this deck, including Sapling of Colfenor, especially if we can pump up Sapling of Colfenor. I think we will be drawing an extra card at the beginning of our upkeep a lot of the time with Abzan Beastmaster, so pretty great. Next we have Erebos, God of the Dead, 3 and a black for a 5/7 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. Your opponents can't gain life, and finally you can pay 1 and a black and pay 2 life and draw a card. So Erebos, God of the Dead, is mainly in here to draw us cards. Yeah, great creature for drawing his cards. Also prevents our opponents from gaining any life. Next is Beast Whisperer. 2 and 2 green for a 2/3 elf druid. That says whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. And again, that's on cast, not when a creature enters the battlefield under your control. So even if it gets countered, you still draw a card on cast. But yeah, in a deck with 57 creatures, we are going to be drawing a lot of cards off of Beast Whisperer. Definitely a great card in this deck. Next is Bloodgift Demon. 3 and 2 black for a 5/4 flying demon. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. So if you want to make an alliance with somebody, you can have them draw a card. If someone's really low on life, you can have them draw a card and lose a life. Most of the time, you're just going to be drawing a card and losing a life. Pretty great. Next we have the Gitrog Monster. 3, a green, and a black for a 6/6 legendary frog horror with Death Touch. And at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you draw a card. So the Gitrog Monster, as long as you choose not to sacrifice it, is going to be drawing you a card every single one of your turns because you'll have to sacrifice a land, which will trigger it to help you draw a card. And it also gets around that downside by allowing you to play an extra land every turn. So as long as you're drawing plenty of lands, as long as you have enough lands in your hand, it's not much of a downside. Actually a pretty great card. Next we have Keeper of Fables. 3 and 2 green for a 4/5 cat, and whenever 1 or more non-human creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, unfortunately it says 1 or more, so you're not going to be drawing like a billion cards off of this. But if you do hit multiple players in the same turn, you'll be drawing that many cards, so that's great. And almost all of our creatures are not humans. I actually can't think of any humans off the top of my head. I'm sure we got at least 1 or 2 humans in this deck, maybe not. But anyway, yeah, if you have 3 opponents and you deal combat damage to all 3 of them, you're going to be drawing 3 cards. It's a pretty great deal. Next we have Clackbridge Troll, another card from Throne of Eldraine. 3 and 2 black gets you an 8/8 troll with trample and haste. So 5 mana for an 8/8 trample haste. Pretty awesome. When Clackbridge Troll enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 3/0/1 white goat creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on your turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, tap Clackbridge Troll, you gain 3 life, and you draw a card. So, if the opponent that you're attacking is the one with the goats, you can tell people, I'm going to be attacking you, I'm not going to be attacking you, you can tell everyone who you're planning on attacking. And so then usually only the person you're planning on attacking cares and is going to want to sacrifice a creature. So if you gave the goats to someone else, then they're going to have to sacrifice one of their, more important creatures. But, oftentimes maybe nobody's going to be sacrificing a creature. If the person you're attacking has no creatures and no one else cares that you're attacking them, you're just going to get an 8 damage with your trample haste. But yeah, lots of the time this is going to be gaining you life and drawing you a card. Not a bad deal. Next we have Demon Lord Belzenlock. 4 and 2 black for a 6/6 Elder Demon with flying and trample. When Demon Lord Belzenlock enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card, then put that card into your hand. If the card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat this process. Demon Lord Belzenlock deals 1 damage to you for each card put into your hand this way. So this could draw you a ton of cards, unfortunately also dealing you a ton of damage, but really, in a format where we start with 40 life, that's not a bad deal at all. Next is Soul of the Harvest, 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 elemental with trample. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Well, we have 57 non-token creatures in the deck, so that has potential of drawing us a ton of cards. Next is Harvester of Souls, 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 Death Touch Demon. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. That's even your opponent's creatures, so yeah, if this sticks around, this can draw you a lot of cards, and we do have a lot of removal in the deck too, so yeah, Harvester of Souls does really great with that theme. Next we have Primordial Sage, 4 and 2 green for a 4/5 Spirit. And it says, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card. Again, that's on cast, not on enter the battlefield, so even if the creature gets countered, you still get to draw a card. And our last 3 creatures here, we have Villis, Broker of Blood, 5 and 3 black for an 8/8 legendary demon with flying. And for 1 black, you can pay 2 life, and target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. And whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. So if Sapling on that attack trigger causes us to lose life, it's going to draw us even more cards. And also Villis all by himself, will just draw us 2 cards and give a little bit of removal. You can activate that ability as many times as you want. And so you can, for as much black mana as you have, you can be giving something -X and drawing twice that many cards. I mean, God, such a great card. Gotta love Villis, Broker of Blood, especially in this deck, because we do have lots of lose life triggers. So it can draw us a ton of cards. Unfortunately, it's 8 mana, but we got plenty of ramp. Next, we have our 2 Tudor cards. First is Sidisi, Undead Vizier, 3 and 2 black for a 4/6 zombie Naga with Death Touch, and it has Exploit. So when this creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. You can even sacrifice her to herself. When Sidisi Undead Vizier exploits a creature, you may search your library for a card and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So that's our Tudor right there. And last we have Rune-Scarred Demon. 5 and 2 black for a 6/6 flying demon. When Rune-Scarred Demon enters the battlefield, search your library for any card and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So yeah, our 2 Tudors right there. All right, let's move on to our 6 non-creature spells. So first we have a couple of ramp cards. Of course, as always, we have Soul Ring. Next is Ronis' Monument. 3 mana for a legendary artifact that says green creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So Ronis' Monument can make Sapling of Colfenor really big and give it trample. Perfect for this deck. Next we have Hot Soup. 1 mana for an equipment. Equipped for 3, the equipped creature can't be blocked, and whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, destroy it. Well, thankfully, Sapling of Colfenor is indestructible, so it doesn't matter if Hot Soup destroys it, because it won't be destroyed, it's indestructible. But yeah, giving it unblockable, fabulous way of getting in commander damage. I was thinking of putting in Whisper Silk Cloak, but then we couldn't target Sapling of Colfenor because Whisper Silk Cloak gives it Shroud, and we want to target Sapling of Colfenor in order to pump it up. Next we have Swiftfoot Boots, 2 mana for an equipment that is equipped for 1. Equipped creature has Hexproof and Haste. So, obviously Hexproof is going to protect it, and Haste is going to allow it to attack right away, so we can get that attack trigger right away. Next is Loxodon Warhammer, 3 mana for an equipment that has Equip 3. Equipped creature gets +3/+0, has Trample and Lifelink. So this will make Sapling a 5/5 Trample Lifelink. Great deal, and gaining us some of that life back that we've lost. And finally, we have Gnaw to the Bone. 2 and a green for an instant. You gain 2 life for each creature card in your graveyard. And with 57 creatures, that can be a ton of life. I could see this totally gaining us, 20 life just from 1 cast. And you can cast it again with Flashback. So for 2 and a green, you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Flashback cost and then exile it. So yeah, you get to do this twice. This can gain us a ton of life in this deck. Absolutely fabulous. And that brings us on to the lands. Oh, but wait, I lied. There is one more creature, of course. We have Dryad Arbor, which I put in the land slot because it is a land and it is a creature. So it's a 1/1 land creature forest dryad. So really cool card that Magic made. If you're in a tournament, you need to get the other printing of this because it just looks too much like a forest and it's going to trick your opponents into attacking in. So there is another printing of this that doesn't look so much like a forest. So if you're in a tournament, you need to get that printing. So anyway, Dryad Arbor, even though it is a land, because it is a creature, it's still summoning sick. So you can't attack with it right away. But, and you're not actually casting it because it is a land. You're playing it as a land, so it really can't be countered. But if you reveal it with Sapling of Colfenor, you get to put it into your hand. So it's the one land in the deck that Sapling of Colfenor will actually draw you, because it is also a creature. Next, we have Blooming Marsh, a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands, and it taps for green or black. Then we have Reliquary Tower, which says you have no maximum hand size, and it taps to add a colorless. We do draw a lot of cards with this deck, so yeah, having no maximum hand size is pretty important. Next is Ark of Orazca. It's a land that has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. That's either when you cast this, or if you just have this on the battlefield and you eventually get 10 or more permanents. It taps to add a colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can pay 5 and tap it to draw a card. Activate this ability only if you have the city's blessing. Next we have Nurturing Peatland, which is a land that taps to add green or black, and you have to pay 1 life. Or you can pay 1 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to draw a card. So this is a new card from the Modern Horizons set, and these are all great cards to have in your deck. You know, sometimes you don't need land, you just need to draw a card. So you sacrifice cards like Nurturing Peatland, and there you go, you get to draw a card. Next we have Tainted Wood, a land that taps to add a colorless, or you can tap it for green or black as long as you control a swamp. Next, we have Heshep Oasis, which taps for a colorless. You can pay 1 life and tap it to add a green mana to your mana pool. Or you can pay 3, which is 1 and 2 green, and tap it and sacrifice a desert. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I usually put this card in green decks that I want to deal commander damage, lethal commander damage with. So Heshep Oasis, will be sacrificing itself because it's the only desert in our deck. But yeah, you can use it to pump up Sapling of Colfenor +3/+3 until the end of turn. Pretty great. Next we have Temple of Malady. Temple of Malady enters tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you scry 1, and it taps to add green or black. Next is Golgari Rot Farm. It enters tapped. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and you can tap it to add both green and black mana to your mana pool. So this is a land that taps to add 2 mana to your mana pool, which is pretty sweet. The downside isn't necessarily much of a downside. If you think about other cards that are only 2 mana that ramp you, such as, Sakura Tribe Elder, or I can't think of the name of it, but there's a lot of green cards where you pay 2 mana, search your library for a land, and put it on the battlefield. Well, this is kind of like the same thing. It's ramp on a land. You're returning a land you control to your hand, so that's like you've paid 1 mana, and this is entering the battlefield tapped. So it's like you're paying 2 mana to net yourself 1 extra mana on the battlefield, and that's a pretty good deal. Also, it guarantees you that you're going to be getting that landfall trigger, an extra land drop. Not an extra land drop, but 1 more turn of a land drop, because we're playing a long game format, and all the time you end up on a turn where you don't get a land drop, So these bounce lands, I put them in almost every commander deck because, they keep the land drops coming, right? You return the land to your hand, and by the way, that land can be a land that you've already tapped for mana. It doesn't have to be an untapped land. You can even respond to this ability by tapping the land and floating the mana in your mana pool. So I like these lands, the bounce lands. They're pretty great. Next we have Hissing Quagmire, which enters tapped. It taps to add black or green to your mana pool, or you can pay 3 mana, so you can pay 1, a black, and a green, and Hissing Quagmire becomes a 2/2 black and green elemental creature with Death Touch until the end of turn, and it's still a land. So it just gives us that extra little body when we need it, and since that body has Death Touch, it's a great blocker. Next is Temple of the False God, a land that taps to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Activate this ability only if you control 5 or more lands. Well, again, we're playing a long game format. We're playing Commander. If you don't control 5 or more lands, you're probably just losing the game anyway. So I put this in almost every deck. Pretty much every deck gets a Temple of the False God, because it never has not worked for me, unless I've literally drawn no lands the whole game. And like I said, then I'm just pretty much losing the game anyway. You play this game by playing lands. So Temple of the False God is almost always going to get online. Again, I've pretty much never seen it not work in a commander deck, so I use it in all my commander decks. It's a great land. Next is Twilight Mire. Taps to add a colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can pay a hybrid green-black and tap it to add black-black, green-black or green-green to your mana pool. So this is a mana fixer, right? It'll just give you whatever combination of colors you need to cast a specific spell. Next we have Homeward Path, which taps to add a colorless, or you can tap it and each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns. So if someone's stealing all of your creatures, you can get them back with Homeward Path. Next is Grim Backwoods, which is a land that taps for a colorless, or you can pay 2, a green and a black, and sacrifice a creature to draw a card. Well, we do have plenty of creatures in this deck that we can sacrifice, so yeah, if we're low on cards, we can use Grim Backwoods to draw a card. Next we have Tranquil Thicket, which is one of our 2 cycling lands. So Tranquil Thicket enters the battlefield tapped. It taps to a green mana to your mana pool, or you can cycle it for 1 green. So for 1 green, you can discard it from your hand to draw a card. Sometimes new players think that they can do this while the land is on the battlefield. No, it has to be in your hand. The reason I put the cycling lands in my commander decks is because sometimes you just already have plenty of land. You don't need any more land, so why not discard one of your lands and draw another card, right? Same with Baron Moor. It's the exact same thing. It enters tapped. It taps to add a black, or you can cycle it for 1 black. Next we have Woodland Cemetery, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a forest, and it taps to add black or green. Then we have Command Tower, which taps to add 1 mana in any color in your commander's color identity, so pretty much goes in every commander deck. Then we have Llanowar Waste, which taps to add a colorless, or you can tap it for a green or a black and have it deal 1 damage to you. And finally, we have 9 forests and 9 swamps, equaling a total of 37 lands. And that's it. That's the Sapling of Colfenor deck tech. So let me know what you think. Did you like the deck? Do you think there's something we should do differently? Do you think Sapling is actually a really good tree folk commander? If so, let me know in the comments below. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Until next time, take care, take it easy.